One plant, two fuels, every engine you own. Diesel truck, gasoline car, generator, tractor, lawnmower, every single one. And in 2010, the University of Connecticut tested a single number that the petroleum industry spent 80 years making sure you never saw. 97%. When you understand what that number means, you will know exactly why 4 men with newspapers in Congress made this plant disappear in 1937. You cannot suppress what the soil remembers. You can only delay the people who listen to it. The archive opens in 1892 in a workshop in Munich, where a man built an engine that was never meant to burn petroleum. The first time I came across this evidence, it was not in a laboratory. It was in a barn, Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. An old wooden structure with tools hanging from nails that had not moved in decades. A quiet Amish farmer named Reuben pulled a glass jar from a shelf and poured something that looked like cooking oil into a small diesel tractor. The engine turned over on the first try. No hesitation, no cough, no black smoke. I waited 15 minutes for it to stall. It never did. When I asked him where he bought the fuel, he looked at me like I had asked the strangest question in Lancaster County. He pointed to a field behind the barn. I grew it. 3 words. 300 years of energy independence. Now, consider the evidence. In 1892, a German engineer named Rudolf Diesel filed a patent for the most efficient engine in history. He called it a compression ignition engine. The fuel he designed it for was plant oil. In 1900, he demonstrated the engine at the World Exposition in Paris. The French government asked him to run it on peanut oil. He did. The engine ran so quietly, so smoothly, that most of the audience had no idea it was burning a vegetable oil. Diesel wrote that his engine could be fed with vegetable oils and would help considerably in the development of agriculture. He dreamed of a world where any farmer could grow fuel in his own field. Then, on the 29th of September, 1913, Rudolf Diesel boarded the steamer Dresden in Antwerp. He was traveling to England to meet with the Royal Navy about installing his engines in their submarines. He ate dinner. He retired to his cabin. He left instructions to be woken at 6:15. When the steward knocked, the cabin was empty. The bed had not been slept in. His nightshirt was laid out. His watch was positioned where it could be seen from the bed. 10 days later, a body was found floating in the North Sea. 2 newspapers printed 2 headlines. One said suicide. One said assassination. The official record was never reopened, but the engine he built was quietly handed to petroleum. Within a decade, every diesel engine in the world was burning crude oil. Not plant oil, not the fuel it was designed for. The engine built to free farmers became the machine that chained them to an oil company. And the man who would have fought was at the bottom of the English Channel. There is a woman in Pennsylvania who remembers. She remembers her grandfather's barn, the hemp rope coiled on iron nails, the smell of hemp oil in the kitchen, thick and warm and golden, the tractor that ran on something he pressed himself, from seeds he grew in the field behind the house. Then one day, the rope disappeared. The tractor switched to gasoline. Her grandfather never explained. She only knew something had changed. 80 years later, she walked into a farm supply store and touched a coil of hemp rope on the shelf. She held it to her face. I remember this smell. The Amish settled Lancaster County in the early 1700s. They planted hemp around 1710, So much hemp was harvested that when Lancaster County was officially formed in 1729, an entire township was named Hempfield. The word canvas comes from cannabis. That is how fundamental this plant was. Not decoration, not novelty, foundation. Now, the science. Industrial hemp contains less than 0.3% THC. You could smoke an entire bale and feel nothing but a sore throat. The 2018 Farm Bill made it federally legal. As legal as corn, as legal as wheat. But here is what one plant actually does. Hemp seeds contain 30 to 35% oil by weight. Cold press the seeds, mix the oil with methanol and a small amount of lye. The mixture separates. Top layer, biodiesel. Bottom layer, glycerin for soap. Pour the biodiesel into any diesel engine ever manufactured. No modifications. But that's only fuel one. After you harvest the seeds, you still have thousands of pounds of woody stock per acre. That stock is rich in cellulose. Break it down, ferment it, and you get ethanol. The same alcohol already blended into the gasoline at your pump right now. One plant, two fuels, two types of engines, zero waste. If this sounds too good to be true, stay with me, because the evidence gets worse. Henry Ford understood this before almost anyone. His 1908 Model T was designed to run on gasoline, ethanol, or any combination. Ford invested in a movement called farm chemergy, the idea that farmers should grow raw materials for industry instead of importing everything from petroleum. August 1941. Cameras rolling. A 77-year-old man stands before a car he grew from the soil. Hemp, soy, wheat, flax, pressed into panels lighter than fiberglass. George Washington Carver stands beside him. Ford lifts an axe, swings it into the trunk lid. The axe bounces back. The panel does not dent. The dream was real. The car was real. But by 1941, it was already too late. Something had happened 4 years earlier. The Marijuana Tax Act, signed August 2nd, 1937. Notice the spelling, marijuana with an H. That was deliberate. The word was Mexican slang. If they had called it cannabis, every doctor would have recognized it. If they had called it hemp, every farmer would have objected. By calling it marijuana, they severed the connection between a useful crop and the law designed to kill it. 4 men, 4 motives. Harry Anslinger, Commissioner of Narcotics. Prohibition had ended. His department was about to disappear. He needed a new enemy. William Randolph Hearst, newspaper chains and paper mills. Hemp paper was cheaper than wood pulp, a direct threat. The DuPont family, who had just patented nylon, hemp fiber competed directly. Andrew Mellon, Secretary of the Treasury, the wealthiest man in America, investor in DuPont, and Harry Anslinger's father-in-law. These men did not need to conspire in darkness. They had newspapers. They had Congress. They had the Bureau of Narcotics. The American Medical Association sent a doctor to oppose the act. His testimony was dismissed. And here is the detail that seals it. The Marijuana Tax Act did not ban hemp. It taxed it into extinction. $100 per ounce transfer, tax. When hemp sold for $20 per ton, not banned, not forgotten, buried. That same year, a fuel called agrole was selling at 2,000 service stations across the American Midwest. An ethanol gasoline blend made in Atchison, Kansas. 17 cents a gallon, Leaded gasoline, 16. A penny difference. The petroleum industry lobbied against every tax incentive that could have closed that gap. Between 1933 and 1939, they killed 19 federal bills and 31 state bills supporting alcohol fuel. By 1939, the Atchison plant closed. 2,000 stations vanished. Same war, same years, different weapons, same winners. And then, 5 months later, the most devastating document in this entire archive surfaced. February 1938, Popular Mechanics published an article. The headline read, "New billion-dollar crop." The article described a machine called a decorticator that could process hemp at industrial scale. 5,000 products. Thousands of jobs. An entirely new agricultural economy. But the editors did not know. The Marijuana Tax Act had gone into effect 5 months earlier. The future was announced at its own funeral. And nobody in the room knew it. The men who wrote the law knew exactly what they were killing. They just made sure the rest of the country did not find out. Until it was too late. 80 years of silence. And then, the 2018 Farm Bill quietly undid what 4 powerful men had done in 1937. A young Amish farmer named Reuben Reel from Bart Township founded Lancaster County Cannabis from his basement. He started with 1 pound of hemp flower. Within 4 years, he had moved 50,000 pounds. No pesticides, no synthetic fertilizer, much of the crop harvested by hand, with horse-drawn equipment. The Amish did not need a government program to tell them what this plant could do. They already knew. They had known for 300 years. In 2010, Professor Richard Parnas at the University of Connecticut tested hemp seed oil through standard transesterification. 97% converted to biodiesel. It met every American and European quality standard. And it showed something nobody expected. Superior cold weather performance. A reactor built from a used water heater costs $300. A federal fuel alcohol permit is free. Acre produced roughly 20 gallons of biodiesel from the seeds, plus ethanol from the stalks. 5 acres, and you have real fuel production for a homestead. 10 acres, and you are approaching energy self-sufficiency for a small farm. Hemp grows in zones 3 through 10. It needs no pesticides. It does not spread. You were never supposed to know any of this. Not the 97%, not the 2,000 stations, not the magazine that arrived after the funeral, not the engine that was stolen from plant oil and handed to petroleum. But the soil remembers. The grandmother's hands remembered what the law tried to forget. It did not die. It waited. In the soil, in the barns, in the hands of people who never stopped growing. The archive closes on a seed that outlasted every law written to destroy it. If knowledge like this should not be buried again, you know what to do.